The surprising truth about surviving just 24 hours in ancient Rome's incredible world. Lisa knelt in the dirt, her fingers trembling as they unearthed the glint of something ancient, something unlike any other artifact she had encountered during her years of study. The gnarled roots of the Minnesota oak trees around her wrapped around her ambitions, choking them, just as the weight of her classmates' accolades pressed down on her shoulders. For years, Lisa felt like an invisible ghost in an institution that exalted connections over merit. In her mind raced thoughts of her previous failures, of semi-ignored presentations and dismissive professors. She could almost hear their whispers, just another wannabe archaeologist. But here she was so close. This could change everything. Her fingers brushed against the surface of the relic, and a jolt of energy surged through her, blurring the line between past and present. The world around her dissolved, and Lisa gasped as she stumbled into the vibrant chaos of ancient Rome. The air was thick with the scent of spices and sweat, the streets alive with merchants yelling their wares, slaves rushing to fulfill their masters' whims, and senators debating with fervor. She wasn't just a bystander. She was thrust into a society that paralyzed her with its brutality and privilege. As she amped up to adapt to her role, now a lady of status caught in the machine of ambition, Lisa's thoughts spiraled into disarray. Her ancestor Marcus was a senator, but even in her new role, she felt the suffocating constraints of gender bias. Each moment spent absorbed in the machinations of the aristocracy reflected her struggles in academia. The parallel stung. Here, just as in her world, the powerful crushed the weak behind a facade of order. Pressure mounted within her chest as Marcus's impending doom loomed closer with each tale she heard. "Don't stand in the shadows," a whisper echoed in her thoughts as she recalled her thesis advisor's voice, the doubts resounding sharply. Could she allow Marcus's line to extinguish, all while urging herself to rise and reclaim her narrative, yet fearing that such a choice would plunge her deeper into family guilt? Frustration turned her determination into a pulse of urgency. Before she could help Marcus, she needed proof. Clandestine meetings, devious smiles, dangerous alliances. Her resolve solidified like iron, tightening her fists as she practiced a speech to confront the conspirators plotting against him. But the anxiety inside her twisted like a knife. Decades of feeling inadequate squeezed her throat. Would anyone take her seriously? Even in Rome, her fears whispered, "Stay quiet, don't bring shame to the family." Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously.
Makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The assembly loomed ahead, the faces of power glaring at her nonplussed. Anxiety coiled in her stomach as she fought against the urge to flee, struggling with the weight of legacy and responsibility. Failure, hidden under the guise of social decorum, nudged at her consciousness. Was it truly worth sacrificing family honor to reveal the truth? The crowd silenced. Shadows cast by flickering torches heightened the tension. With everything within her demanding respect, she clutched the scroll detailing the conspiracy. But could she risk her history for righteousness, or would it shatter her in this unforgiving world? The air thickened as she prepared to step forward before the assembly. Each breath felt like a countdown, the echoes of her doubts ringing louder. Lisa held her breath. This moment would either illuminate her existence or fade her into oblivion. Lisa stood frozen, the weight of the scroll in her hands a tangible reminder of everything she risked in that moment. It felt as if the air itself had become thick with anticipation, the eyes of the assembly pressing upon her like a vice. Each beat of her heart echoed her inner turmoil. Would she step forward and take the reins of her destiny? Or would she avert her gaze and remain the invisible spectator, fearing judgment and ridicule? The importance of the evidence she clutched was overwhelming. It contained names, dates, and acts of betrayal. This wasn't just Marcus's life on the line. It was the legacy of her family and perhaps even her very identity. She had to summon the courage to break free from the shackles of self-doubt that bound her. Her mind flicked through strategies, fractured memories of advice from mentors who insisted that knowledge is power. Yet here she stood, painfully aware of her gender's constraints and the suffocating cultural norms of the time. What if she spoke and was dismissed as merely an emotional woman? What if her voice, her truth, was snuffed out before it even had a chance to be heard? Yet a spark of indignation flared in her, igniting a flicker of rebellion. With each tale she had absorbed, each olive branch extended toward power, she realized the entrenchment of her position. She wasn't here just as Marcus's distant descendant. She was a part of a pivotal narrative, a female voice in a male-dominated society. Grappling with her tumultuous thoughts, Lisa felt a resolve seep in. The reality that she could either perpetuate silence, relive her past failures, or reclaim her narrative by forcing her way into the light against the murky undercurrents of Roman politics. With a deep inhalation, she envisioned it. Standing tall, she conjured a vision of herself as not just a member of the aristocracy, but as a force to be reckoned with. The murmurs in the crowd shifted the atmosphere as she sensed eyes watching her every movement. They were waiting for her to either falter or flourish. Fueled by fierce determination, she raised her chin and stepped forward, ready to face the whispers and stares head-on. "Esteemed senators," her voice cut through the tension, steady and unyielding in spite of the tremors beneath. "I bring to your attention a treachery that threatens not only our noble line, but the very foundation of our republic." Lisa noticed a ripple cross the assembly, some onlookers leaning in, others adopting expressions of skepticism. As she spoke, she rolled out the evidence she had gathered, revealing the plot that loomed over Marcus. Each name she mentioned resonated like clockwork in an ancient temple, reverberating through the chambers of power. The assembly's faces morphed from skepticism to disbelief, then to a cautious interest. As she spoke, she rolled out the evidence she had gathered, revealing the plot that loomed over Marcus. Each name she mentioned resonated like clockwork in an ancient temple, reverberating through the chambers of power. The assembly's faces morphed from skepticism to disbelief, then to a cautious interest. The realization that she was commanding the attention of this arena flooded her with electricity. Here, in this ancient context, she felt an exhilarating sense of agency, unlike anything she had ever experienced in her own time. But as the momentum began to build, doubt clawed at her insides again. She could sense the waves of discontent rising among those loyal to the conspirators, their discomfort brewing like a storm. Would they retaliate? Would her own position as Marcus's descendant protect her or target her further? "Have you the audacity to believe you can challenge us?" One senator's voice rang ominously through the hall, filled with contempt and a thinly veiled threat. Lisa's heart raced as she prepared her retort. This confrontation, this defining moment, was only just beginning. And as fear threatened to engulf her, she realized she could either emerge victorious or collapse under the weight of expectation. The assembly became a crucible, and as she steeled herself for the battle of wits ahead, she understood that her growth hinged not merely on this confrontation, but on her willingness to confront her fears and embody the legacy she wished to honor. With her mind racing, she braced herself for the challenges to come. The stakes had never been higher, and the true test of her strength was just beginning. The assembly buzzed with tension, each senator caught in a web of reactions, their faces portraits of disbelief and disdain. Lisa fought against the pounding surge of anxiety. She had crumbled under such pressure before, retreating into shadows rather than seizing the moment. But this time, her resolve ran deeper, anchored in her lineage and the potential she felt swirling within her. "Yes, I do have the audacity," Lisa replied, her voice unwavering, yet beneath she deciphered the assembly's faces. Predatory anticipation flashing in some eyes, curiosity flickering in others. It was a dangerous game. She was well aware of the stakes. The whispers of betrayal echoed from the scroll she had clutched, transforming into a cacophony of their own making. She needed an advantage, a way to flip their narrative, to command respect not only for her lineage, but for her intellect. She took a deep envisioning strategies taught by her mentors. Knowledge was her weapon, and knowledge could be weaponized against the very men who now questioned her authority. "If you seek to silence me through intimidation," she continued, "know that your threats are empty. Here before you stands the weight of history, unmasked. Evidence proving that your allegiance rests not with the Republic, but with treasons steeped in deception." Each assertion volleyed toward the assembly carried the gravity of generations. As she ticked off the names aligned with conspiracies, she noticed some senators squirm under the scrutiny of their inheritors' choices. The trick was not just speaking the words, but understanding the chains that bound them, the fear of exposure, the dread of losing power. An unexpected wave of confidence surged through her. Her heart steadied as she locked eyes with varying expressions of shock and realization. She was shifting the tide. The senators were not merely colleagues, they were rivals. Tonight, before the storm brewed fully, would alter their perception of women in power, beginning with her. "You can argue that a woman cannot stand in these halls," she stated, directing her gaze at the formidable senator who had challenged her. "But your vision is limited. It lacks the understanding of the very soul of our republic. My voice shall be heard, for it echoes the truths that our lineage deserves." An uneasy silence draped the room. Lisa sensed an inner scrimmage amongst the senators, their usual impenetrable armor of authority beginning to crack. She pressed on, sensing an opportunity. This was more than a test of her strength. It became a battleground for a budding autonomy, daring to challenge not only the figures before her, but also the collective mindset that defined her world. The moment rippled with potential for change, change that had always been outside her grasp. The senator's scowl deepened. "What makes you think we will listen?" he barked, retorting yet again with the stone-cold resistance of a man unwilling to yield. "Because history waits for no one," Lisa declared, her resolve crystallizing. "And while you may feel threatened, I stand as proof that the future is unavoidable. If you deny me now, you deny the birthright of all women who have been silenced. The Republic deserves better, and I will not rest until the truth is exposed." The murmurs rose again, louder this time, as uncertainty battled with indignation, a tumult for control. Her heart raced, beating a primal wish for this to matter, for this to mean more than mere words. But the stakes heightened as she observed senators exchanging glances. Some had begun to lean forward, intrigued. Others wore expressions of disbelief, their power possibly hanging by a thread. In any defeat, she was now acutely aware that the risk of revealing the truth might ignite more danger than she could face. Would she be met with an agreement, or a sharp counterstrike that would ultimately suffocate her aspirations? The room's atmosphere thickened, a palpable challenge suspended like a blade above her. Lisa understood that this moment, founded upon the revelations of yesterday, rippled through to the potential of tomorrow. The assembly could choose to grow or wither, a battlefield stretching far beyond her current certainty. With a deep breath, she prepared for the oncoming clash of wills. The challenge teetering on the edge could either lead her to a breakthrough or send her spiraling back into the shadows she fought so hard to escape. As the debate inched toward its climax, she realized that every confrontation had an all-or-nothing quality. The true test of her resilience lay not just in advancing herself, but in surviving the consequences of her audacious claim for truth and freedom. And there, under the gaze of 1,000 hopes, the question echoed in her mind. Would she be ready to face the upcoming storm, or would the tempest overpower her once and for all? The murmurs escalated, a cacophony of disbelief and anger entwined, as senators exchanged furtive glances. Lisa braced herself, the weight of their scrutiny pressing down like a thick fog. This was a pivotal moment. The direction of her future, and indeed the future of all those like her, hung in the balance. She had often felt like an outsider in these halls, her identity woven through a tapestry of expectations gifted by her ancestors. But today, with fury simmering beneath the careful veneer of civility, she felt the fire of her birthright igniting within her. How long had she waited for this? Years of training, of observing, of silently absorbing the strength of those who came before her. Now was the moment to translate that knowledge into something transformative. With each word she spoke, Lisa recognized a growing rhythm within herself. It was more than just a speech. It was a redefinition of herself in the eyes of her peers. She was shedding layers of doubt and insecurity, reconstructing her identity as a figure worthy of respect and authority. The Republic falters when it refuses to acknowledge truth and transparency, she continued, now adopting a more strategic stance. For too long, those who wield power have cloaked their intentions in shadows. I stand not just for my lineage, but for every citizen who believes their voice matters. You underestimate the fire of those who've been silenced. As the room shifted, faces of uncertainty shifted toward intrigue. Lisa seized that brief flicker of attention to dig deeper. This wasn't just about arguing a point. This was about enacting change, dismantling an entrenched patriarchal structure that had stifled voices for generations. The senator she had targeted leaned over his desk, eyes narrowed, challenging her assertion. And who will you rally behind you when the tide turns? It's easy to be a martyr, but who stands with you? Lisa squared her shoulders, refusing to shy away from the question's depth. She needed to assert not only her stance, but also the notion that the voices she represented could not be extinguished. Those who
believe in justice, she replied, her tone firm. Those who are tired of being relegated to shadows. The tides can turn in an instant, often against those who least expect it. I am prepared to draw them in, to lead a charge of accountability against your kind. An electrifying silence enveloped the assembly, and for a moment Lisa saw it, the tiny cracks in the facade they maintained. Men who had once dismissed her now appeared wary, as if contemplating the truth in her words, possibly realizing that their power was as fragile as the alliances they depended upon. But beneath her growing confidence, a ripple of fear crawled up her spine. What if their pushback was ruthless? What if the revelation of their wrongdoings incited consequences beyond mere political fallout? A wave of determination coursed through her. If she crumbled now, the weight of history she had evoked would crush her underfoot. I am unbowed and unwavering, she proclaimed, feeling the necessity of her next decision blossom. This was a moment for a gamble, a calculated risk to push beyond the lines they had drawn. I will not back down from this pursuit of truth, just as the legacy of our ancestors could not be silenced. If you choose to challenge me, know that you will not fight alone. I will gather those who share my conviction. Do not mistake my resolve. It runs deeper than mere ambition. As Lisa spoke these final words, she noticed the shift amongst her colleagues. Gazes that once burned with derision now flickered with apprehension. Perhaps her audacity had begun to gnaw at them, instilling doubt where certainty once thrived. With the atmosphere thickening, she knew she had ignited a spark, yet it was also a dangerous game. Confrontation loomed like darkened clouds, threatening to unleash a storm. Would this transformative moment solidify her standing or unravel into chaos? Lisa took a deep breath, her heart racing, the electric thrill of defiance coursing through her veins. The time for withdrawal had passed. The question that now lingered was whether she could maintain her grip on this fragile power after the storm arrived, or if it would scatter her ambitions like leaves in a tempest. In this precarious balance, she prepared for what lay ahead, grappling with the very real possibility that her next steps could lead her to triumph or doom, igniting a conflict that not even she could foresee. The clamor of voices faded into a low hum as Lisa stepped down from the podium. A peculiar haze of adrenaline coursed through her system, intermingling with doubt. Had she really just laid her ambitions bare in a room full of adversaries? Or was it a reckless gamble that would seal her fate? Each breath felt weighted, laced with the tension of imminent repercussions. Back at her seat, Lisa focused on her trembling hands. She needed to channel this uncertainty into strength, transforming fear into a motivating force. The momentary spark of courage she had ignited with her words was merely the beginning, but she recognized the inherent risk of fanning those flames further. Opposition was already brewing, and they would not take her defiance lightly. She glanced around the chamber, scanning the faces of her colleagues. Some remained entrenched in their skepticism, while others appeared to be calculating the implications of her boldness. For the first time in years, she realized she was not just a perceived stumbling block, but a catalyst for something greater. Yet, even as her mind soared with possibilities, a nagging question pressed against her consciousness. Was she ready to lead? Her thoughts spiraled into recollections of those who had influenced her. Each mentor had illuminated a path she could take, but the risk of following in their shadows loomed large. The memories were double-edged. While they imparted wisdom, they also served as stark reminders of the burden that came with leadership. What if she failed? Could their legacy bear the weight of her inexperience? As the session progressed, Lisa's resolve crystallized. Yes, she was afraid, but that fear could fuel her development instead of becoming a prison. If she was to effect real change, she would need to map her strategy with precision. She needed allies, not just those who would rally behind her rhetoric, but individuals who shared her vision fiercely enough to weather the storm ahead. Fleshing out a plan, Lisa began assessing her allies and adversaries. Who among the senators could be swayed by her message? Who would remain steadfast in their opposition? She recognized that understanding the inner workings of these dynamics was just as crucial as her oratory skills. Knowledge would be her shield against potential backlash. As she pushed her thoughts through this internal lens, a discovery emerged. Lisa had spent years observing the intricacies of politics, studying confrontations, and learning from the shadows. It was time to acknowledge her ability to dissect power structures in real time. The realization made her sit up straighter. Hidden within her observations was competence, a talent waiting to be unleashed. She had insight into the broader scheme that her colleagues often overlooked. With newfound clarity, she prepared for her next steps. She began envisioning not only her strategy, but also the narrative she would craft alongside it. To gather support, she had to tell a story, one that resonated with those who felt unheard. Her journey would be built on the shared experiences of struggle and resilience, intertwining her path with the fabric of those who lingered in the margins. The palpable tension shifted as she inhaled deeply. Each move she made would be scrutinized, but that scrutiny could either stifle her momentum or propel her forward. She had chosen to stand strong,
eyes fixed firmly on the horizon. Just as she began outlining the contours of her strategy in her mind, the door to the chamber swung open. An unexpected figure strode inside. A seasoned senator, known for his ruthless reputation, but also for wielding considerable influence. As he approached her, Lisa felt her pulse quicken. What did he want? The twist of fate could either play into her hands or thrust her into a web of deceit. With tension thickening in the air around her, Lisa's mind raced. The next move could alter her trajectory entirely. Would she seize this opportunity to solidify her position, or would it become a moment of reckoning? The confrontation loomed ahead. Her next step might define her destiny. Lisa's heart raced like a metronome, keeping time with each cautious advancement the senator made toward her. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with unspoken stakes and ambitions colliding. He stopped 2 feet from her, his steel-gray eyes piercing through her fragile confidence. "Lisa," he began, his voice deceptively smooth. She hated that he used her first name. It suggested a familiarity he had not earned. "You've stirred quite a discussion today." His lips curled into a smirk, one that offered neither respect nor camaraderie. Swallowing her anxiety, Lisa straightened her posture, using the senator's presence as a reminder of the tenacity she needed to embody. "Senator Miller, I'm glad to hear my words resonated with you," she responded, meeting his gaze with a defiance that surprised even herself. "Resonated? I'd say they sent shock waves through the room." He stepped closer, invading her personal space, attempting to unnerve her. "You're a brave woman, Lisa. Or perhaps foolish. Do you truly believe you can challenge the status quo?" Each question he posed coiled around her like a serpent, tightening its grip. "I believe in progress," she replied firmly, determination flooding her voice. "Stagnation is where ambition goes to die." His laughter echoed through the sparsely populated chamber, devoid of warmth. "Ambition is a beautiful tune, but often it's those playing it who hit the sour notes." He leaned slightly, lowering his voice, a calculated move to draw her in. "Tell me, do you have any idea what powers you're up against? Real change isn't just about throwing stones, it's knowing when to build walls or break them." His words were mere smokescreens, designed to obscure a genuine challenge. As he spoke, Lisa's internal dialogue raged. Was he trying to intimidate her, or was he merely testing her resolve? "You speak as if I'm a child playing in a minefield," Lisa countered, sharpening her tone. "I've been paying attention, and if anything, I know the terrain better than most." Each word came out with the force of a stone. She was no longer merely reacting, she was engaging, confronting. He paused, a flicker of intrigue crossing his face. "Tell me then, what's your play, Lisa? You've got the stage, but do you have the audience? What happens next when the clamor dies? You might find yourself stranded with all the noise fading into echoes. And then what? What do you intend to accomplish?" In that moment, something shifted within her. The fear that had been a tight knot began to unravel. She had been danced upon by the ghosts of doubt long enough. "I intend to forge alliances," she declared, muscles tensed with purpose. "I'm not a lone player. I'm building a coalition. People ready to face discomfort for the sake of a future we can all believe in. We're ready to push back against complacency, and your tactics won't scare us away." Miller surveyed her for a lingering moment, the faintest shadow of respect mingling with skepticism. "Bold, but ambition without a plan is a dangerous game. Then let's craft a new plan." Lisa felt the stakes elevate, the weight of his scrutiny transforming into an earnest exchange. Let's speak of vision, of strategy, rather than just power plays. If you're willing to engage, I'm ready to collaborate. Miller's eyes narrowed, reading the newfound strength within her. "You really think you can sway my circle? Let me assure you, they are not so easily impressed. I don't expect an easy path, Lisa replied, but I have something they've dismissed, sincerity and a willingness to change the narrative. This isn't merely about influence, it's about authentic connection, something your circle seems to have forgotten. His smirk returned, but now it felt less of a sneer and more a provocation. Consider this then, young leader. Bridges can easily be burned if you misjudge their flames. He began retreating, his aura clouding like a thunderhead. As he turned to leave, Lisa felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. One confrontation had sparked new pathways, illuminated her weaknesses, and revealed a budding confidence she hadn't fully realized existed. She was aware now that the battle was not just against opponents like Miller, but also against self-doubt. Still, looming over them both was the question of trust. Who would back her? An unsettling atmosphere brewed around her, but within it, determination crystallized. There was no turning back. This was the beginning of a greater struggle. And just before he reached the door, he glanced over his shoulder, the challenge lingering in the air between them. Let's see what your next move is, Lisa. We'll see who burns first. The declaration settled over her like a heavy fog as she contemplated her next strategy. In that moment, she understood. It was time to gather her allies, to unveil her narrative. What threads would she weave to craft this new tapestry of power? Would she uncover the backing she needed, or would the shadows of doubt swallow her whole? Time was ticking, and the stakes were escalating. The echo of Miller's challenge lingered in Lisa's mind, threading through her thoughts like an unsettling melody. Every specter of doubt she had fought against felt momentarily subdued, but the undercurrents of uncertainty tugged fiercely at her resolve. She had managed to stand her ground, but now she needed to chart the path forward. Alone in the dim chamber, Lisa turned her focus inward, searching for the inner compass that would guide her next moves. Inspiration often struck in the quietest moments, and she knew she needed to harness the energy she had just tapped into. She considered her skills, her ability to analyze complex situations, her talent for connecting with people, and, most importantly, her drive to craft a narrative that resonated with authenticity. Planning took shape in her mind amid the echo of the senator's derision. She needed to reach out to those who still believed in genuine connections. They wouldn't just follow her blindly, they needed to buy into her vision. Lisa reached for her notebook, the pages filled with ideas, sketches of strategies that had once felt far-fetched, but now seemed like seeds waiting to sprout. Her first call was to Andrew, an old colleague from her last campaign, a sharp strategist with a knack for political dynamics. He had seen the inside workings of Miller's circle, and Lisa needed someone who knew the landscape better than she did. As the phone rang, a mix of hope and nerves fluttered in her chest. "Andrew, it's Lisa," she said, as he picked up with an unmistakable cheerfulness. "How have you been?" "Busy as usual. What's going on, Lisa?" he replied, his tone shifting to the serious note she had anticipated. "I'm looking to put together a coalition. I need insights, maybe even some help navigating the political waters around Senator Miller. When can we meet?" Silence followed, and she could almost hear the gears turning in Andrew's mind. "You're serious about this?" "Absolutely. I firmly believe change is possible, but I need to position myself more strategically." The pause stretched, and when he spoke again, Lisa could feel his cautious optimism. "All right, I'm interested. I'll clear some time, let's say Thursday." "Perfect. I'll prepare something." After hanging up, satisfaction coursed through her veins. Each small victory was a stitch in the tapestry of what she wanted to create. Now, she needed to consider who else could contribute. The next days were a flurry of activity, each conversation bolstering her confidence. Lisa found herself reaching out to former peers, mentors, and even those she'd never worked with directly but admired from afar. They shared her vision of true reform, and slowly, threads of collaboration began to weave together.
Each person she spoke to added dimension to the coalition she had envisioned. As the days turned into evenings filled with strategy sessions and brainstorming, Lisa's sense of purpose crystallized. She was rapidly moving from a place of self-doubt to one of emerging leadership. Her confidence grew, but so did the weight of responsibility. With every new ally, her risk increased. Trust was a fragile thing, especially in the political arena, and she needed to ensure her coalition was both resilient and sustainable. With newfound energy, she began drafting a mission statement, a manifesto of sorts that aligned with the values of those rallying behind her cause. It was as much about defining her position as it was about understanding the narratives of those who might find their way to her cause. Yet, even as she felt the momentum building, an unsettling thought kept creeping into her consciousness. Each step she took could also draw the ire of more formidable opponents who loomed just outside her newly acquired alliances. By the time her meeting with Miller's allies approached, a tension thrummed quietly beneath her surface. She had been playing the long game, but would it be enough? As Lisa stared at her reflection in the glass, steeling herself against the overhead light that seemed to amplify her resolve, one question hung in the air like smoke. Was she truly prepared to face the backlash that might come once her plans were set in motion? Across the political stage, a new confrontation awaited. The challenge wasn't just about alliances. It was about navigating the implications of those allegiances while anticipating the silent countermeasures poised to strike. And what would the fallout be when she crossed paths with Miller again? Would her strategies withstand the weight of what was coming? The stakes were higher than ever, and the moment to engage was at hand. The day of her meeting with Andrew arrived, and apprehension clawed at Lisa's insides. She had spent the previous night meticulously refining her mission statement, each word almost a prayer to the possibilities she envisioned. As she approached the coffee shop where they agreed to meet, she wondered if her preparations would be enough to convince Andrew of the stakes involved. The ambiance was vibrant, the clinking of cups and murmur of conversations composing a background melody that slightly soothed her nerves, yet the undercurrent of tension remained. Andrew's sharp mind was capable of both illuminating her path and piercing through any flaws in her plan. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he exclaimed, sliding into the booth opposite her, a tumbler of coffee steam wafting toward her like a greeting. "Not a problem. I've been thinking a lot about our discussion," she replied, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior. "I really believe we can frame this differently from the usual narrative. We can break the mold." Andrew raised an eyebrow, skeptically but intrigued nonetheless. "Go on." His attention ignited a flicker of courage within her. "Miller's approach is rooted in fear and division. We can offer a clearer vision, one built on inclusion and transparency. This isn't just about taking him down, but reshaping the dialogue entirely." Andrew took a sip of his coffee, his silence prodding Lisa to delve deeper. "Imagine a campaign where narratives are built on understanding. If we present ourselves not just as opponents, but as advocates for genuine change, we disrupt the cycle of polarization." "Sounds idealistic," he countered, probing her resolve. "Are you ready to fight back if he retaliates?" Lisa felt her pulse quicken. The question hung in the air heavily, and she was aware of how much was at stake. "I've considered that. I can't just champion ideals. I need to be prepared for every possible fallout. I've started lining up supporters who share the same vision, but also possess skills in campaign strategy, conflict resolution, and public relations. I'm ready to build a defense mechanism around our message." "No shortage of ambition," Andrew remarked, appraising her with a mixture of skepticism and admiration. "But ambition alone might not carry us through." As they delved into specifics, Lisa realized she had inadvertently monitored her tension levels and responded with solutions rather than doubts. Each time Andrew challenged her, she felt a surge of determination to prove herself. It became a dialogue of strategy and insight, a spirited brainstorming session that painted visions of where their efforts could go. By the time the coffee cups were empty, a partnership began to form amidst the whir of ideas and momentum.
Andrew was warming up to the vision, his critical eye shifting more toward enthusiasm. "All right," he finally said, nodding. "Let's take this route. I want to help guide the logistics, but we need a plan of action, and soon." "Of course," she nodded eagerly, heart racing with the prospect of solidifying their coalition. "I'll start reaching out to the others." Yet as she left the cafe, rejuvenated yet cautious, a dark shadow loomed over her thoughts. New pathways meant new targets. As alliances formed, others would no doubt begin to splinter. Was she truly ready to confront the complex labyrinth of opposition that was bound to arise? Later that evening, Lisa found herself alone at her desk, surrounded by scattered notes and half-written strategies. In a world of shifting loyalties, each decision felt less like a mere step forward and more like a calculated risk. She began drafting the roadmap for their next moves, even as the gnaw of trepidation nestled back into her consciousness. What would be the next blowback from Miller once he caught wind of her growing influence? With every collision of ideals and ambitions, she was one step closer to exposing herself to both paramount alliances and dangerous enemies. The prospect was both exhilarating and terrifying. As thoughts whirled, Lisa grabbed her phone, her finger hovering above Andrew's contact. Should she call him and strategize again, or did she need to sit with her anxiety a little longer? Time was of the essence, but so was clarity. With the pressure mounting, she faced a pivotal question. Would she risk everything in pursuit of a recalibration of power she ultimately might not control? The game was only just beginning, and the stakes had now escalated. In the silence of her room, uncertainty wrapped itself around her like a tightening shroud. As shadows danced across the walls, one ominous thought lingered. If she was to chart this course, who was truly steering the ship? The morning sun crept through Lisa's window, casting long shadows across her desk cluttered with papers. The events of the previous day loomed large in her mind, but beneath the thrill of potential, a cold undercurrent of anxiety ran deep. Determination fought against doubt, and she felt the weight of every decision pressing heavily against her chest. She sat upright, reminding herself of her mission. With every day that passed, she'd have to unveil herself more, a gradual stripping away of masks to reveal her true objectives. But who was she becoming in the process? The stakes were more tangible now, each subsequent step inching her closer to a political battleground where failures could shatter not just her ambitions, but her very essence. The buzzing of her phone broke her reverie. It was Andrew. His message sparked immediate excitement laced with a hint of trepidation, urging her to move forward. "Let's meet to outline the strategy," it read. As she responded with an eager affirmation, she felt the familiar tightness in her throat, the fear that came with expectations. She recalled the captivating way Andrew had lit up when they had talked about not just opposition, but the value of advocating for a new future. Yet would he still feel that spark when faced with the complexities of execution? Hours later, she sat at the coffee shop again, this time sharpening her focus, ready to meld ideas into actionable plans. Andrew arrived, his demeanor shifting from casual to businesslike as their dialogue commenced. "Here's what I'm thinking," he began, flipping open a notebook filled with doodles and snippets of their conversations. "We need a clear timeline, specific messaging targeted to our audience, and a response strategy to counter Miller's likely attacks. He won't just sit silently." Lisa took a breath, her mind grappling with the whirlwind of responsibilities flooding in. The weight of strategic foresight hung in the air like a thundercloud ready to break. "Absolutely. I've gathered notes on potential allies and alignments that can support our objectives, but I need to focus on distinguishing our narrative from Miller's divisive tactics. We can't be reactionary." Andrew nodded, but his brow furrowed. "That's a good point, but how do you handle the inevitable pushback? When you position yourself against someone like him, you may become the target." The question cracked open an internal dialogue that brought forth more than just her professional ambitions. It amalgamated her values, her fears, and the whisperings of her own insecurities. Could she maintain her integrity while fighting back in an arena built on hostility? "I believe that if we stand firm in our principles, our supporters will follow," she replied, summoning a resolve that surprised even her. It echoed with an understanding that it wasn't just about power, but a personal choice to rise above the fray. Principles, Andrew echoed thoughtfully, but principles don't win battles often. You might have to explore strategies you're uncomfortable with. Each word felt like a challenge, and she could sense the looming crossroads. Was she truly ready to navigate the gray areas of morality for the sake of the greater good? Did she possess the fortitude to endure upheaval and dissent, risking erosion of her ethical foundation? As the confrontation between her convictions and the realities of a fiercely competitive landscape brewed within her, Lisa felt a pulsating energy to not only strategize, but also to evolve. It was no longer just about a political campaign. It was about understanding who she was and who she wished to become. Amidst this internal reckoning, a looming question became pervasive. How far was she willing to push her own boundaries in pursuit of this greater vision? Her phone buzzed again, a notification from her research group. Another potential ally had surfaced, creeping closer to the sanctuary of her ambitions. But with every new partnership, did she narrow her vision, or did she broaden her understanding of what strength truly meant? A shiver snaked down her spine as realization pierced through the haze of excitement. The stakes would test not only her resilience, but her moral compass. Would she be left adrift in a world that may not offer the clarity she sought? With these thoughts swirling chaotically, Lisa felt the tether to her intentions pull taut. The choices she faced were inseparable from the vision of herself she yearned to manifest. And she asked herself, who would she need to become to steer this tumultuous ship toward her desired horizon? As shadows loomed and decisions beckoned, she braced for the inevitable storm that would challenge her at every turn. The moment of truth was approaching. Lisa stepped into the assembly hall for what she felt would be the defining moment of her life. The energy was electric, the tension palpable, as senators filled the seats, some with skepticism etched on their faces from her last confrontation, while others bore glimmers of curiosity. This time, however, she wasn't merely the descendant of Marcus. She was an evolving force, ready to step into her power. Her heart raced, but with each steadying breath, she could feel the burden of uncertainty begin to lift. She had spent days rallying allies, nurturing connections, and sharpening her vision. Armed with a robust coalition and a clear mission statement, Lisa felt a solid confidence coursing through her. No is a word of the past, she thought, recalling the intensity of previous encounters. Today would reflect her transformation, not only as a woman in a male-dominated arena, but as a catalyst for change. She was prepared to face Governor Miller and the forces aligned against her, and the stakes had never been clearer. Esteemed senators, she began, her voice slicing through the murmur of uncertainty. Every eye in the chamber turned to her, and for the first time she felt a wave of recognition wash over her. I stand before you not as just another voice in the crowd, but as a representative of every individual tired of the old narrative. Together, we will weave a new fabric of leadership, one built on transparency, inclusion, and profound respect for our republic. As she spoke, she glanced around, situating herself not just as a speaker, but as a leader embodying the hope of her allies. The evidence she had gathered became a mere backdrop. Today, she would articulate a vision that would leave no room for intimidation and dismissal. I challenge you, Lisa declared, her words resonating throughout the hall, to join me in this pursuit of a future where honesty reigns over deceit, where voices previously silenced are elevated and acknowledged. The time for change is now, and I cannot shift this landscape alone. The assembly buzzed with murmurs. Lisa watched as a few weary expressions began to emerge in the crowd. She seized that moment, drawing strength from their indecision. I have already made connections with those who will stand with me. Alliances are forged from shared values, and it's time to rise above the legacy of fear. To deny progress is to deny the very foundation of what we represent. She could see the winds beginning to shift, a flicker of interest igniting in some faces. Miller rose, an imposing figure clad in authority. "And what makes you think a coalition formed on such transient ideals will stand? You misjudge the power of legacy, young Lisa." The challenge was expected, but instead of wavering, Lisa felt her resolve solidify. "The legacy of silence and fear is a prison. I aim to liberate us from despair, and I invite you to see the strength in vulnerability." Surrounded by her allies, she sensed a swell of courage. "This is an opportunity, not just for me, but for all of us, to redefine our roles, to ensure that the future isn't dictated by a few, but shaped by the many. Together, we will embrace accountability without the need for fear." Lisa locked eyes with Miller, unwavering. "What you perceive as naivete, I see as the archetype of courage. I know the stakes, and I am ready to face the storm. We deserve leaders that inspire change, and I refuse to be another footnote in history. We are the authors of our narrative." The assembly shifted again, this time gifts of belief sparkling in the air. Senator after senator began to nod. Murmurs transformed into expressions of tentative support. A woman with a fierce reputation among the senators stood and addressed the crowd. "If Lisa can confront her lineage and strive for a new narrative, why can't any of us?" In that moment, Lisa understood the depth of her growth. She had transformed from a hesitant student, crushed by the weight of others' opinions, into a woman with conviction. Each step, each word had brought her closer to this powerful narrative woven in authenticity. Her allies began to rise, encouraged by her words. Proposals for collaboration were laid out, strategies outlined, and hope manifested. Lisa felt the vibrant tapestry of her aspirations knitting together, finalizing into something tangible, something real. As the assembly concluded, the recognition she felt was unlike any she had known. No longer was she merely carving a place for herself. She had orchestrated a movement that resonated beyond the walls of this hall. With renewed energy, she exited the assembly. The journey ahead might have its thorns, but she was clear about her direction. Today, she had not just saved Marcus's legacy, she had reclaimed her own. Empowered, validated, and holding the reins of her destiny, Lisa was not just a voice, she was a force to be reckoned with. As she stepped into the welcoming sunlight, Lisa smiled, knowing she had accomplished something profound, something that would surely resonate through generations. Now, dear viewers, it's your turn to join the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and shout out your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story of personal ambition and triumph. This is your moment to show support. Don't wait even one more second.